Thank you everyone again for joining us in this webinar. It is my pleasure on behalf of the Organization of American States, the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism and Cybersecurity section, to welcome you to this webinar where we will launch our joint effort with the International Telecommunications Union on a report called The Systems Approach to Understanding National Cybersecurity Education Capacity. So we're very excited to be launching this effort. And with that said, before we start, we wanted to let you know that this webinar will be held in both English and Spanish, and you can select your language clicking on the globe icon below, as you can see on the screen, and you can select the language of your choice. Just so you know, the beginning of the webinar will be held mostly in English, and then in the panel, we'll have both English and Spanish. So then just make sure that you select your language if you don't speak both languages, so you don't miss out on anything. Ahora cambiando a español para que nuestros colegas también se puedan conectar a la interpretación. Este webinar va a llevarse a cabo tanto en español como en inglés. Entonces pueden clicar en el icono que aparece como un globo abajo en su pantalla y ahí pueden seleccionar su idioma. El principio del webinar sobre todo va a llevarse a cabo en inglés. Y luego en el panel vamos a tener inglés y español, así que asegúrense de ahí seleccionar español en caso de que quieran escuchar este webinar en español para que no se pierdan de ningún detalle. Bueno, muchas gracias. Now, continuing, just to mention that the opinions expressed in this presentation and this webinar do not necessarily reflect the views of the General Secretariat of the OAS or the governments of its member states. And before we start with our opening remarks, we also wanted to take this opportunity to invite you to follow us on X in OEA Cyber or ITU Development, where you can learn more also about the initiatives of both the OAS and the ITU in terms of cybersecurity and other opportunities such as this one. And we also have our mailing list with this QR code, where you will receive emails about, for example, webinars such as this and other opportunities open to the public. And you'll get a lot of relevant information, for example, on free resources and capacity building related to cybersecurity. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our first two speakers, Marco Viso, the Chief Digital Networks and Environment in BTD ITU, and Violanda Botet, who is the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States. So welcome, thank you so much for joining us. And now we will start with Marco. You have the floor with some opening remarks to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mariana. And I guess I would say good afternoon almost to everyone, even if from our side it's 8 o'clock in the evening here in Geneva. Well, thanks again, and I really want to thank you, Organization of American States, for having hosted us for this webinar. And I see now a number of participants is 214 at this as we speak. So it's quite a good attendance. But thanks a lot to Violanda and all the team here, and also on our side, the ITU team, to have pulled together this big effort, which is something that is absolutely needed at this stage of the cybersecurity evolution, if you want to say. And as you mentioned, Mariana, this is basically the launch, is for the launch of the paper that is about cybersecurity education capacity, and the main, as you will explain, the main goal is really to close the global cybersecurity workforce gap, and this is pretty evident on why we have done this joint effort, is because of course cybersecurity is evolving a lot, but there is a gap that has been generated, like the digital divide in a sense on cyber, related to the catch up on the workforce and the catch up on the capacity and the capabilities and the expertise and the competencies that the workforce need to cope with the existing and future cybersecurity challenges. And you will see in the report there are a few data points. One for all is that there are still around 4 million jobs to be covered, to be to be, let's say, taken in a sense. So it's a challenge, but it is also an opportunity. And among these, also there is a little bit of a gap in terms of the participation of women that are only represent only 25% of the job globally. So the idea here, just for everyone, was to try to understand the challenges that there are there, that might be from the supply side, or from the demand side, and try to come out with something that we consider a system approach. We consider like a whole of ecosystem approach at the country level to manage, this gap and to try to address it through a certain amount of measure. I'm not going to go into the detail, of course, because that would be the whole presentation and the whole panel related to that. But I think that what has been done again as a joint effort was to try to give also an answer, not just in terms of a pure publication, but also in terms of how, let's say, what could be the steps or what could be the model that could be adopted. And this goes hand to hand with, of course, the development on national cybersecurity strategy, for which ITU and OES are engaged since long time, separated but also together. And the idea there was to try to fill this gap that is on the workforce and on the job opportunities. I try to show also that there is let's say, there are opportunities out there for whoever wants to engage on cyber from the job perspective, but also in terms of knowledge, which is, of course, a base, one of the fundamental elements to deal with cybersecurity or with the cybersecurity challenges. So with that, I'll stop here, and then I'll pass the floor to Violanda. And again, thanks a lot to everyone, to you, Mayara, to Violanda, to everyone, and of course to all the participants here. And again, the number is increasing, so let's carry on and let's try to share as much as possible about this report and this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I am also pleased to give Yolanda the floor.
Thank you very much, Marco. And I see the numbers now up to 250. So we're really increasing as we speak. And thank you again. Thanks to you, to ITU. And on behalf of the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States, I'm delighted to welcome you to this program, which is going to offer a vital platform to explore how nations can strengthen their cybersecurity education systems, as you just heard, so that we can meet growing digital security demands and challenges. Before we begin, I also want to express again my gratitude to ITU for their collaboration in organizing this session, as well as all the distinguished speakers and panelists who are making the time to contribute today and to this important dialogue. In today's interconnected world, cybersecurity education is not just a priority, it is a foundation for national security and economic resilience. As cyber threats grow more complex and frequent, the ability to defend critical infrastructure and protect sensitive information and maintain operational stability hinges on a skilled and sustainable workforce. This need is especially urgent in Latin America and in the Americas overall, where the rapid pace of digital transformation amplifies the demand for robust cybersecurity education and training. Addressing these gaps presents both a significant challenge, but also an unparalleled opportunity to build resilient systems that support long-term growth and security. The numbers tell a compelling story. According to ISC Square, there's a global shortage of roughly 4 million qualified cybersecurity professionals, with more than 300,000 of these positions currently unfulfilled in Latin America and the Caribbean alone. Bringing this gap requires more than bridging these gaps requires more than isolated initiatives. It demands a structured, holistic approach. Today's discussion aims to highlight how this systems approach can help nations meet current cybersecurity needs while preparing for future challenges. At the OAS SICTE, we are committed to supporting our member states in building robust cybersecurity ecosystems through education and workforce development. One standout example of this commitment is our Creating a Career Path in Cybersecurity program. Since 2017, this initiative has trained over 1,200 young people in cybersecurity across countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Mexico, Panama, Peru, the Dominican Republic, as well as Trinidad and Tobago. With its focus on 3 key pillars: training talent, providing hands-on experience, and fostering collaboration, this program exemplifies our efforts to establish sustainable, inclusive, and impactful cybersecurity educational programs. Collaboration is at the heart of our progress, and this event exemplifies the value of partnerships among international organizations, governments, civil society, academia, and the private sector. Together, we know we can build a pipeline of cybersecurity talent that not only addresses today's workforce gaps, but also anticipates and adapts to future needs. The presence of representatives from different sectors here today underscores our shared commitment to this objective. I'm confident that the insights shared during this session will inspire actionable strategies to strengthen cybersecurity education systems. And as we discuss these systemic approaches, let's also focus on how to ensure inclusivity, scalability, and sustainability in our efforts. In closing, again, I want to thank our colleagues at the ITU for their collaboration, as well as the experts who are about to contribute to this session. Our collaboration marks an important step forward in our collective journey to build robust cyber capabilities. Together, we can strengthen the capacity of our nations to build a secure, resilient digital future. So thank you very much, and back over to you, Mariana.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for your kind words, and thank you so much, Marco, as well as the whole ITU team, which is who this effort also wouldn't be possible. I'm very happy with this collaboration. And with that, I would like also to proceed to the next part of this webinar, which is a presentation on the report that brings us together here. This is a QR code where you can find the publication, and we will also be posting the link in the chat for everyone to be able to access it. And in the next portion of the webinar, we'll hear from someone who has been completely instrumental in the development of this report, and we'll be able to shed some light into what exactly is a systems approach and how we can adapt this approach into not only cybersecurity in general, but particularly cybersecurity education capacity. So with that, I would like to welcome Matthew Griffin, who's an independent consultant to the ITU, and will be presenting this paper, after which I will come back and talk a little bit more about the initiative that Yolanda mentioned, related to capacity building and cybersecurity work development and education, and how the OAS is trying to build the capacities of our member states and support our member states in this realm. So Matt, you have the floor.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Before I dive into the paper, if I can ask, I'd like you all to imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a theatre watching an orchestra perform live. You close your eyes and listen closely. Every instrument that you hear contributes something unique. The strings are driving the melody. The brass is adding drama and power. Sorry, let me just, for the translation. Okay. Every instrument contributes something unique. The strings driving the melody, the brass adding drama and power, and the percussion setting the rhythm. But none of this happens by chance. Every musician is carefully coordinated, guided by the conductor. Now imagine that on the night of this concert, there's no conductor. The strings start too early, the brass section comes in late, and the percussion, without cues, starts playing off beat. Despite this incredible talent in the room, the results feel disjointed, falling far short from what the audience expects. A symphony only works when all of its parts are in harmony, and the harmony requires coordination, a systems-level view of how everything comes together. The same is true for national cybersecurity education systems. Each component, schools, universities, training programs, awareness campaigns, all have immense potential. But without a unifying approach, the results can at times be fragmented and fail to rise to meet the challenges we are all facing. Today, I want to briefly talk to you about our paper on how applying a systems approach can help us create harmony in national cybersecurity education and transforming these disjointed efforts and elements into a cohesive and effective whole. The purpose of our paper is to offer ideas that can help to close the global cybersecurity workforce gap and institutionalize a structured process for building cybersecurity capacity. Achieving this requires strengthening national cybersecurity education capacity across all countries, with a particular focus on lower middle income countries. So what do we mean by national cybersecurity education capacity? In the paper, we define it as the administration and governance of cybersecurity education programs and initiatives, and their accessibility and suitability across all of society. This includes awareness-raising efforts, formal and informal learning opportunities, vocational and professional training pathways, and building knowledge and capabilities through research and development. Building on this, national cybersecurity education capacity building refers to the activities aimed at increasing a nation's ability to develop cybersecurity knowledge, skills, and abilities across society. So in essence, we're looking at the systems, the programs, and the different initiatives that enable nations to prepare their citizens and organizations for a secure digital future. Sorry, let me just check. Is the screen not sharing, Mariana?
No, sorry, I thought it was an intro before you shared screen.
Let me just retry.
If not, I can share it for you. There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So yeah, in essence, we're looking at the systems, programs, and initiatives that enable nations to prepare their citizens and organizations for a secure digital future. Our paper examines how a systems approach can improve the design and implementation of these efforts and ultimately guide future interventions. So in terms of a bit of background, which has already been covered a little bit, so I won't spend too much time. But we've heard already around how cybersecurity is the digital backbone of our interconnected world. Yet there's a discord in the system, a mismatch between supply and demand in the global cybersecurity workforce, as we've heard already, in the order of millions of professionals that are urgently needed. This gap is particularly pronounced in the lower middle income countries, where limited resources and competing policy priorities make it even harder to build a skilled workforce. Meanwhile, the increasing complexity of digital threats, geopolitical tensions, and the rapid adoption of emerging technologies like AI are amplifying the demand for cybersecurity expertise. The consequences are clear. A lack of skilled professionals leaves businesses, governments, and individuals vulnerable to attacks, threatening the stability of our economies and the safety of our communities. Despite progress over the past decade, national cybersecurity education capacity building remains an emerging field with much still to learn about effective practices, especially in supporting lower middle income countries. One way to think about key challenges is to look into the supply and demand side issues, with the alignment between these critical for meaningful progress. Some examples of supply side challenges for national cybersecurity education capacity include a lack of awareness and aspiration for cybersecurity career pathways, the need for greater alignment of cybersecurity education with industry needs, and underutilization of the labour market, with women and minority groups underrepresented. Some examples of demand-side challenges for national cybersecurity education include demand for cybersecurity competencies are rapidly growing, outpacing supply. There is variability in the workforce needs depending on country context and resources, requiring different approaches for different countries. And barriers to entry due to high requirements for entry-level roles. These are just a few examples, and addressing these challenges requires a systems approach, one that bridges the gaps, aligns education with workforce needs, and fosters an inclusive, forward-looking ecosystem. To create harmony in national cybersecurity education capacity, we must first understand its key components. Our paper presents 5 components that we have identified through review of leading frameworks for assessing cybersecurity capacity and include school curricula and programs, which we can think of as the string section of the orchestra, providing the foundational melody by integrating cybersecurity into primary and secondary education. Tertiary education and research. This might be the woodwinds, nuanced, complex, represents universities and research institutions that add depth by training experts and driving innovation. Training and certification is our brass section, bold, direct, much like the role of certification programs in preparing professionals to enter and develop in the workforce. Awareness and culture could be our percussion, which sets the rhythm, ensuring that cybersecurity becomes a societal norm, ingrained in culture and behavior. And finally, our conductor, administration and governance, the policies, frameworks, and governance structures that ensure all the sections work in unison. Each of these components plays a vital role, but their true power lies in how they work together. Just like the sections of an orchestra, they must be coordinated to achieve a cohesive and impactful performance. By understanding and addressing these 5 components, countries can lay the foundation for a robust national cybersecurity education system that is both comprehensive and sustainable. So here's where the story deepens. A systems approach acts as the conductor for this orchestra, ensuring that every section is aligned and that their contributions complement rather than compete with each other. But what do we mean by a systems approach? At its core, it's a way of thinking that acknowledges that no part of a system exists in isolation. A national cybersecurity landscape is made up of many interconnected components, and each of these interact with and influence the others. To further illustrate this concept, let's consider a simpler but equally relevant system, a bicycle. A bicycle has several easily defined components such as wheels, gears, pedals, and brakes. Each of these parts play a role in moving the bicycle forward and in a preferred direction. But here's the key. No part functions in isolation. The effectiveness of the entire bicycle system depends on how well these parts work together. Now imagine replacing one component, say upgrading the tires for a smoother ride. The impact of this change depends entirely on how the new tires interact with the gears, with the brakes, and the overall frame. And just as importantly, the bicycle's performance is influenced by the environment in which it operates, a sandy beach, a snow-covered path, or a smooth indoor track. The same is true for national cybersecurity education. Each component, school curricula, tertiary education, training, awareness, and governance must work together as an interconnected system. A change in one area, such as introducing new training programs, will ripple across the system, impacting other areas like awareness and workforce readiness. By adopting a systems approach, we can better understand these interconnections, anticipate unintended consequences, and design interventions that strengthen the entire system rather than addressing components in isolation. By applying system thinking's tools, we can better understand the full picture, identify where interventions are needed, anticipate unintended consequences, and create solutions that are not only effective but sustainable. One of the tools highlighted in this research is the development of a national systems concept diagram, which you can see on the slide. To continue the orchestra analogy, Think of the systems diagram as the musical score for our cybersecurity education symphony. It shows how all the pieces might be optimized to work together. The systems diagram represents all the interconnected components and activities that enable the country to build cybersecurity knowledge, skills, and abilities across society. However, this system does not exist in isolation. It operates within a broader environment influenced by national priorities, societal challenges, external forces, such as global policies and technological trends. Understanding these interactions is critical for identifying opportunities and addressing gaps in a country's approach. To make sense of this complexity, a country can create its own systems diagram tailored to its unique context. Such a diagram can allow policymakers and different stakeholders to visualize the system's components, look at their interactions, and try and understand the external factors that might be impacting them. By mapping the various inputs like funding, technology, and expertise, and the outputs such as workforce readiness, cybersecurity risk reduction, countries can identify different leverage points in their system to try and maximize impact. For instance, a national diagram might highlight how simply raising awareness of cybersecurity careers in secondary schools could have a direct increase in the participation of education pathways and ultimately expand the workforce pipeline. This kind of visualization provides a practical tool for aligning interventions with national goals to support efforts to ensure resource allocations are directed where they will have the greatest long-term benefit. As we all move to strengthen national cybersecurity education, the findings of this paper underscore the potential value in adopting a systems approach. By examining cybersecurity education through this lens, we can create holistic solutions that address the unique challenges each country faces. Based on these insights, the paper offers some recommendations for countries. Some examples of these include mapping your system to help visualize your existing environment, as I've just discussed, leveraging other system thinking tools to further analyze challenges, opportunities, and leverage points within your national context. When designing interventions, evaluating your system's capacity to absorb and sustain them, and ensuring they align with your broader national priorities. And design holistically, incorporating different levels of capacity from the individual to the organization and the overall enabling environment into the design and evaluation of your programs. These recommendations, along with a checklist of example interventions, are detailed in the paper and provide actionable strategies that can be tailored to diverse national needs. Before I finish up, let's return to the orchestra one final time. When a symphony is conducted well, it creates something far greater than the sum of its parts. Each of the instruments, although unique and vital, combine to produce a performance that can resonate with its audience. This same potential exists for national cybersecurity education systems. Each component we've discussed and will discuss today has immense value, but the real power lies in their coordination. By adopting a systems approach, we can ensure these components work in harmony, creating a robust cybersecurity workforce, a cybersecure society, and a resilient future for all. But this symphony isn't performed by one conductor. It's shaped by many: governments, educators, industry leaders, civil society organizations, all working together to meet the unique needs of a country. This is a collaborative effort, and each of us has a role to play. As we move forward, I encourage you to reflect on your own role in this process. Are you helping to set the rhythm as a policymaker? Maybe you are building the melody as an educator. Thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Mariana.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that insightful presentation. I love the storytelling as well, and the analogies. It's a great way. I think it's a way of explaining something in a way that we can all understand it as well, coming from complex ideas and more theoretical and bringing them into practice. So thank you so much. And with that, I wanted to share with you very briefly some more information about a program that Violanda mentioned in her remarks, called Creating a Career Path in Cybersecurity. And this is just to complement Matt's presentation as well, to show you, okay, now that we have this paper, this collaboration with ITU, and what have we been doing also in the realm of cybersecurity, workforce development, and education with OAS member states from the OAS perspective as well, and how we intend as well to utilize this new resource that we have, thanks to this collaboration with ITU. So this program, Creating Career Path in Cybersecurity, is a program that has been financed by City Foundation and has been running for the past 7 years, basically. Basically with the aim of generating a cybersecurity education ecosystem and promoting the development of the cybersecurity workforce. This program, as was mentioned in the opening, includes 3 particular components: training opportunities for young talents, with different levels and in basic, intermediate, and advanced trainings, as well as an apprenticeship program through which the idea is to provide them with opportunities to develop either the professional skills and also gain practical experience, and the development of a national cybersecurity education framework. That is a pilot that we started this year with Costa Rica. So what do these cybersecurity certifications and trainings entail? These students are trained through technical trainings on cybersecurity fundamentals, incident management, threat analysis, digital forensics, various topics related to cybersecurity, and that are relevant nowadays to cybersecurity, that are constantly updating, which is important. We have also been partnering with ISC2 to offer certifications so that the students get certified. We launched a few weeks ago the Certified in Cybersecurity certification, and we had applications from over 2,000 people, and hopefully we'll be able to get about 1,000 people certified through the certification. But we also had 15 students certified in security information, for example, certifications from IC2. And we also explore other partnerships, for example, with Platzi in Latin America and the Caribbean, to get these students also exposed to other opportunities for learning through these types of platforms where they can access different online courses as well related to cybersecurity. Then we have the National Cybersecurity Education Framework, which is a pilot that I mentioned. We started in Costa Rica this year. We basically developed a workshop, and the idea is to develop workshops on cybersecurity education and workforce development based from the report that you have in the chat and that we've been discussing and that Matt just presented. So we created a workshop that is tailored to representatives from the government, private sector, civil society, and academia. And the idea is that it's a very practical workshop where we sit together, we explore, and we present these concepts that Matt talked about. But we also hear from the different representatives about what is the reality in each country, and how we can basically fill in the blanks in this orchestra or in this framework that Matt was sharing. So that's on one side, and then on the other side, based on the results of this workshop, that in the case of Costa Rica, it was held in June of this year with the support of MISIT and the Cybersec cluster. With the results of the workshop, we've been developing recommendations, in this case to Costa Rica, hopefully to other member states in the future, with the aim of institutionalizing cybersecurity education and workforce development. So the idea is that with the results and with the consensus of what was explored and what came out of the discussions during the workshop, we developed more recommendations linked to, okay, what is the state of, in this case, Costa Rica right now in terms of cybersecurity education and workforce development, and what are some of the recommendations and the things that can be done in the future to promote cybersecurity education capacity, basically. And then finally, professional development. The idea is to promote what we've seen with our students is that basically, even though most of them come from technical backgrounds, we see that there's a huge need to promote soft skills as well. Not only technical skills, but also soft skills, because these are very low sometimes in these students coming from very, very technical backgrounds. They can be amazing programmers, for example, but then in the moment of communicating, of creating a PowerPoint presentations, we've seen that these skills are lacking a little bit. So this is where soft skills come in. And we try to provide them with basically to develop integral professionals that are prepared to enter the cybersecurity workforce in the future as well. And we do workshops on CV preparation and cover letters, preparation for interviews, for example, but also we've done other webinars like speed networking webinars where they're able to network with people from the industry, cybersecurity professionals, get to know if this career is actually something that they're interested in. Basically, also other webinars, for example, to promote workshops to promote their creativity, leadership, and public speaking skills. For example, we've done some webinars on entrepreneurship and cybersecurity, which has been great ways of getting them to develop these other skills. And these are just some examples of the students that have been trained through different some of these different aspects of professional development. And then finally, one of our, I would say one of our greatest programs is the Cyber Talents. It's an apprenticeship program. And the idea is to create, it's basically an internship where the students work one side with the CECIT Americas network, which for those of you who don't know what CECIT Americas is, it's a network of incident response teams from the OAS member states. It's a hemispheric network, and basically the students work with this network to provide and generate innovative cybersecurity solutions for different organizations in OAS member states. So for the incident response teams in the member states, we've had over 20 students working directly with CECIT Americas in the past 4 years, developing over 20 projects. Many of them have gone over to secure jobs in companies, for example, like Microsoft and others. And this year we launched a pilot program specifically for women to promote the participation of more women in cybersecurity incident response teams and in cybersecurity teams. And we've had, I'm happy to report that we have 3 women now working, 2 of them with Dominican Republic, with the Centro Nacional de Ciberseguridad, and 1 of them with MISIT, with the cert in MISIT. And it's been great. We just came from having a meeting with them today, and they've been getting hands-on experience. Raciel, for example, in Costa Rica, hands-on experience, for example, in terms of how Costa Rica is dealing with cybersecurity incidents. They're all very happy and learning a lot. And that's where also the importance of the practical experience comes in, and the mentorship as well, because they're getting to work with amazing professionals as well. And these are just some testimonials from some of our students. David actually is from Costa Rica, and he is working at Microsoft right now. So all of them have gone out to have great roles in cybersecurity and in technology in general. And I think with this, just to leave you with the importance of really what we're doing here, I know that we hear a lot many times, and we've heard it many times today as well, okay, we have the cybersecurity skills gap, we have the cybersecurity gender gap, we need more people in cybersecurity, but this is the reality of what we're doing. These 3 examples is what we're doing. We're forming the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. We're providing people with opportunities to be able to work in the sector that can provide a lot of opportunities for many young people as well, for many women. So this is a little bit the impact that we'd like to show about what we've been doing, but also what we aspire to do more in the future as well. So with that, thank you very much. And we will be moving on to, if you give me 2 seconds, to the last component of our webinar, which this presentation was a little bit of a segue to what we'll be discussing now. That is what is being done in different countries and organizations, for example, like ITU, in terms of cybersecurity education and workforce development, and some examples, and how we can also implement the systems approach in cybersecurity education and workforce development. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel. And thank you all very much for joining us. We have Caroline Schrein she's a program officer of the Cybersecurity Division of ITU. César Molina, National Cybersecurity Director of MISIT in Costa Rica. Fabiana Santellán, Information Security Management and Audit Manager from AGESIC in Uruguay. And Carrie-Ann Barrett, who is the Cybersecurity Section Chief of the OIS-ICTE. So with that, I'll leave you with Carrie-Ann. And thank you very much to all our panelists for joining us today, and for Carrie for moderating this very insightful panel as well.
Thanks so much, Mariana. And let me emphasize how grateful we are to the ITU for having us partner with them to deliver this. We have a great panel with us. We hope that this will give you some very practical insight as to why we see the link between cyber education and workforce development. As we begin, I wanted to open up the panel to just one question. That's like an icebreaker. The panel will be in Spanish and English. Heser and Fabiana will speak in Spanish, and Caroline and I will speak in English. It's the nature of the OAS. We're dynamic like that. So we will be starting off with cybersecurity gap has been, like the workforce gap has been spoken about so often across like every single conversation we can have. So I wanted to throw out a very broad question as we kind of jump into our panelists. From your perspective, what really is the biggest challenge in this cybersecurity workforce? We've spoken about the educational component so far today, but I don't know, Fabian, I'll probably kick off with you. Just share with us from your perspective, and I'll do a round with everyone. What's your perspective on the real challenges that we have in the workforce for cyber? Fabiana, adelante.
Hola, bueno, muy buenas tardes y buenas noches para todos los que nos acompañan. Muchas gracias, Kerry y Olivia, por la invitación. Como me decís, me diste el desafío de arrancar. Yo voy a arrancar por lo que entiendo que es el principal desafío que tenemos en esta materia, porque cuando vamos al mercado de trabajo, y como está muy bien diagnosticado de que realmente faltan muchos profesionales en la materia, ni que hablar que además tenemos un tema de género que abordar ahí, que es un desafío adicional, y creo que eso se da justamente porque en las primeras edades, y esto es algo que muchas veces conversamos con colegas y con amigos, cuando uno va en edades escolares y le pregunta a un niño, una niña, bueno, ¿qué quieres de grande? ¿Qué quieres hacer de grande? Y todos dicen, bueno, no sé, abogado, escribano, médico, bombero, policía. A todo le puede poner nombres fácilmente. No creo o dudo bastante encontrar a un niño, una niña que diga, quiero trabajar en ciberseguridad, ¿no? Y quizás esto de comenzar a tener referentes, personas de carne y hueso que humanicen la ciberseguridad, algo que hablaban bastante previamente, de que esto no es un tema solo de ingenieros o de técnicos. Hacen falta profesionales en muchas disciplinas que entiendan la ciberseguridad y que aborden la ciberseguridad desde su perspectiva. Ejemplo, el ámbito legal, ejemplo, el ámbito de la medicina. Obviamente va a ser necesario personas vinculadas a los ámbitos técnicos, típicamente la ingeniería o digamos, profesiones de ese corte. Pero realmente la ciberseguridad hoy es un tema transversal, ¿no? Es un tema que afecta a las organizaciones, a los tomadores de decisión, pero también afecta a la persona, a la ama de casa, al niño, al adulto mayor que está intentando interactuar con la tecnología, intentando hacer una llamada de WhatsApp, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que el primer desafío que tenemos es ese, es que los niños entiendan de que esto es una posibilidad para su futuro profesional. Y agrego, y con esto cierro mi primera intervención, nosotros en Uruguay hicimos justamente identificando que este era un problema, o que era un área en que teníamos que trabajar, le preguntamos a jóvenes en edad adolescente, ¿qué se imaginan que es un especialista en ciberseguridad? ¿En qué trabaja? ¿Cómo es un especialista en ciberseguridad? Y realmente la figura en el imaginario colectivo, o al menos de estos grupos que nosotros consultamos, es muy curioso. Son hombres, quizás de no buen aspecto físico, ¿no? Un poco gorditos, que les gusta mucho la matemática, que hablan mucho inglés, y que tienen muy poca vida social, ¿no? Ese es el imaginario colectivo de los que trabajamos en ciberseguridad, de cómo se ven las personas que trabajamos en ciberseguridad. Así que si tendremos desafíos para empezar a cambiar ese estereotipo y humanizar esta profesión que es tan bonita y que tantas aristas tiene para desarrollarse.
Thanks so much, Fabiana, and such a good segue into Hesera because he laughed the loudest, I think, when we described what a typical cyber professional looks like. And Hesera's the head of the CCERT for Costa Rica, and really bringing this down to the grassroots, which Fabiana has done. What do you see as the biggest challenge for us in workforce for cyber?
Bueno, muchas gracias primero que todo. Bueno, estoy un poquito cortito, tengo que ponerme a dieta, eso sí, soy especialista en ciberseguridad, pero bueno, a nivel digamos, de mi país y lo que hemos visto en las organizaciones, creo que la brecha en habilidades especializadas, vemos que la ciberseguridad y todas esas amenazas van evolucionando. Estamos hablando que esto evoluciona muy rápido. Al evolucionar muy rápido, estas amenazas que implementan inteligencia artificial, vamos ahorita a darle computación cuántica y todo eso, se generan muchas especialidades en este campo. Entonces, eso yo veo que es uno de los principales retos hacia futuro, ¿verdad? Porque vamos a ir creando diferentes tipos de, por decir, subespecialidades de la ciberseguridad. No es lo mismo un arquitecto de seguridad que un pen tester y así sucesivamente. Entonces, hay diferentes habilidades que se tienen que desarrollar en ese campo, perfiles. Y eso es una parte, digamos, de la definición de perfiles que es fundamental. De hecho, ya que lo estuvieron hablando anteriormente, esa definición de perfiles y también saber qué es lo que se necesita en cada institución. Eso por un lado. Después, a nivel de la capacidad de respuesta ante esas nuevas amenazas, eso es otro reto que se tiene en lo que es el desarrollo de la fuerza laboral. Vemos también que la necesidad del desarrollo de las habilidades blandas. De hecho, les comento, ahorita hemos tenido incidentes importantes en Costa Rica y no solo es tener las habilidades técnicas, vean que aquí hablaron de las habilidades blandas y cómo usted maneja esos incidentes y la inteligencia emocional es necesario. Y imaginar las habilidades blandas con un equipo de trabajo, porque aquí todo se tiene que, no se puede trabajar en islas, sino con equipos, y van equipos multidisciplinarios. Multidisciplinarios que también tienen que entender qué es ciberseguridad. Aquí veo que hablaron de abogados. Abogados tienen que entender también el tema de la parte de ciberseguridad. Es una cuestión de cultura y tiene que ser transversal a todo esto. Y otro tema que tal vez atenderlo a nivel de fuerza laboral, a nivel público, aparte que ya bien lo abordaste, es verdad que hay bastantes, vamos a ver, un déficit, ¿verdad?, de profesionales en este campo. En la parte pública tenemos un reto aún más grande, porque aparte que hay ese déficit, o sea, hay mucha demanda, hay poca demanda, ¿verdad? En ese sentido los profesionales que ya tienen su especialidad, se pagan sus certificaciones, etcétera, etcétera. De ahí, la parte privada paga aún mejor, ¿verdad?, que la parte pública. Entonces, la retención del talento es primordial. ¿Y qué aspectos que se tienen que abordar ahí? ¿Cómo realizar un plan estratégico? Ahí viene la parte de gobernanza a nivel de ciberseguridad, que es otro, digamos, de los perfiles que se tienen que abordar de cómo usted hace que ese ciclo, porque es un ciclo, siempre va a haber, usted capacita a alguien, usted tiene que tomar en cuenta que esa persona lo vas a tener que retener 2 años, 3 años, cuanto mucho, genera esas capacidades y ahí viene qué va a pasar, se lo lleva. Eso va a pasar y tenés que trabajar en una manera que sea un ciclo que tenés que afrontar esos riesgos, pero tenés que estar preparado para seguir haciendo ese ciclo de desarrollo de fuerza laboral. Entonces creo que es unos retos importantes que se tienen ahí. Igual hay muchos, pero yo creo que son los principales.
Oh, that's so excellent because it really sets us up to understand that the scale of the problem that we're dealing with is much larger than just looking at degrees and certifications. And I think what Hesser mentioned about talent retention and looking at that cycle, Carolyn, I'd like to turn to you because in facing this challenge and where ITU sits, you have to interact with private sector, other international organizations, and governments. So how do you see us being able to pull this together to improve the overall cybersecurity skills and training gaps that we have?
Great question. And it's very appropriate also because ITU is a bit unique within the UN in that we have private sector members who participate in our work. And certainly within the cybersecurity program, they are very core to our work because the private sector is such a large actor when it comes to response. But before getting to that, I want to just take us a little step back because when we're looking at improving skills and training, in the most recent Global Cybersecurity Index, and I imagine there are probably some people on this call who helped their countries respond to our questionnaire, for which we are extremely grateful. But one of the interesting outcomes of that was when you look at that education pipeline, you could see, okay, not that much in primary schools. Makes sense. Young children probably not going to be your cybersecurity experts. Secondary school also maybe not that much, but that's when you really want to make sure you're training or getting skills so that students can start to choose these fields, whether or not then they pursue university. And university is where most countries have cybersecurity trainings or programs, not as cyber youth trainings outside of that. Even more countries reported that they had university trainings versus trainings for cybersecurity professionals. And it may be then that the private sector really needs to step up to make sure that it is making sure that its professionals are well trained. But we also need to make sure that when we're doing these trainings, that there is that pipeline or there is a pathway for jobs, because we don't want a lot of people really trained in one day's technology or threats, and then that lays fallow for a long time. They can't apply that, can't sharpen their skills. That's why ongoing trainings and ongoing opportunities to develop your skills. I'll say there have been a few conferences that I've been at, and I've spoken to people who are so qualified. They have so many certifications, they've done so many 1 week or 1 day trainings, but they don't get to apply it because the jobs aren't necessarily there, or what they've trained in isn't necessarily the demand. I saw in the chat there was a remark about cybercrime and cybercrime investigation. So then how do you make that translation between them? Now, we all have to work together, of course. And I think going back to what Matthew was saying about the conductor or the orchestra, or maybe the cyclist on that bicycle, you want to make sure that there is some direction. And that's why activities like having a clear national cybersecurity strategy, something that we, and I know OAS works extremely hard to help countries develop, can be so useful in terms of setting a general direction and making sure that there is a clear action plan, clear roles and responsibilities going forward. Also, one of the things with the Global Cybersecurity Index, we did find quite a few countries don't necessarily have anybody in charge of this. So they'll say, for example, we want to do it, but nobody's in charge of it in the end. And then too often it ends up being the CERT, that becomes the training academy de facto, or a university that happens to have a program. Not least when it comes to then diversity challenges, where you then have already maybe an overloaded agency or team that also then has to consider all the wider aspects. So that's why planning and having these discussions is really useful, and why I personally really like this framework, because it is that everybody has a role to play. And I just wanted to give applause to Gizer's point about this isn't just a technical issue. We need good cyber lawyers. We need to make sure law enforcement understands the challenges. When we're talking about training, it's not just training the technical staff, it's training everyone within the ecosystem to support it moving forward.
And that's such a good point. And I think even when Fabiana opened and she thought about what does a cyber professional look like, a cyber professional is all of us. And I'd like to turn back to you, Fabiana, because as a female professional, it's often said that there's a huge underrepresented group that doesn't have access to cybersecurity training and jobs. From your perspective, do you see this as something that is a challenge? And is there any experiences you have that you could share on unrepresented groups in this field?
Bien. Nosotros en Uruguay, y acá voy a hablar a nombre personal, yo personalmente en lo que ha sido mi trayectoria no he visto una limitación para acceder a formación. Pero también entiendo que eso que puedo decir yo como Fabiana no es necesariamente representativo en todas las mujeres y que existen ciertas limitantes que muchas veces pueden ser por oferta. En el chat, por ejemplo, están mencionando mucho el tema de acceder a formación en idioma en inglés, ¿no? Y que eso muchas veces puede llegar a ser una limitante. También puede estar un tema personal, de que, bueno, no sé si lamentablemente, pero digo, es un ámbito donde habitualmente son más hombres que mujeres, puede llegar a ser intimidante. Nosotros en Uruguay hemos fomentado el desarrollo de capacidades en materia de ciberseguridad. Y tal cual lo veníamos conversando, tratando de enfocarnos en diferentes perfiles. Con la OEA, por ejemplo, hemos impulsado varias iniciativas donde le presentamos la ciberseguridad a las mujeres. G-Secure es un caso. Tenemos una campaña muy bonita dedicada a niñas que hicimos para presentarles, bueno, en base a los gustos, qué cosas podría estudiar en materia de ciberseguridad. Pero también hemos trabajado en formar, en traer cursos al país y en brindar capacidades en materia de ciberdiplomacia. Pero también es importante para nosotros que existan profesionales que ya hoy por hoy están trabajando en ciberseguridad, que puedan perfeccionar esos conocimientos. Y tenemos líneas, por ejemplo, orientadas a becas para poder generar conocimientos de posgrado, de maestría. También muchas veces nos pasa, sobre todo a los que están trabajando, por ejemplo, en equipos de respuesta, que no es lo mismo trabajar en un SER nacional que tiene digamos, una exposición a incidentes mucho mayor que lo que puede haber en una organización. Tenemos un Cyber Range para poder entrenar, ¿no?, esos escenarios que eventualmente son poco frecuentes, ¿no?, en una organización común, para que cuando el día de mañana tengan realmente que enfrentarse a un incidente, no sea la primera vez de esas personas. Y esas son, digamos, en Uruguay también se hizo una currícula, un plan de estudios que está disponible para cualquier centro educativo, que lo puede tomar y adoptar para su centro educativo y generar, como fue el caso de la UTU, la Universidad de Trabajo de Uruguay, un analista en ciberseguridad, ¿no? Entonces acá vemos que hay como diferentes enfoques para diferentes perfiles de personas que van diplomáticos, ¿no?, licenciados en Relaciones Internacionales, que están trabajando hoy por hoy en la Cancillería de Uruguay, fomentar el conocimiento de ciberseguridad para trabajar, por ejemplo, en espacios multilaterales. Estamos generando currículas para generar nuevas carreras que puedan abordar los temas de ciberseguridad. Pero también no dejamos de atender a los que están hoy ya trabajando en el medio, que puedan perfeccionar, ya sea a nivel de posgrado o maestría, pero también que puedan entrenar su conocimiento en herramientas como un Cyber Range. Entonces, el empezar a tener esos lineamientos de tratar de tener un abanico de opciones que permita a diferentes perfiles poder avanzar en materia de ciberseguridad, para nosotros es fundamental.
Thank you so much. And I think of everything that you've said, I think a part as well that speaks to me is that emergency evacuation exercise, kind of making sure that those unknown circumstances that aren't that regular, that you know the skills. And it brings me to you, Heser, because it's like you don't know what you don't have until you're in the situation. And I think from Costa Rica's perspective, you've gone through so many challenges. And has that really changed the way that you look at the skills gap that you know you now need? And has it changed how you've approached training for your team for all of these incidents?
Disculpe si estaba apagado. Pasa mucho en la parte virtual ahora. Bueno, en Costa Rica, yo veo el vaso medio lleno, obviamente, de todo lo que pasamos, pero hay unas cuestiones que son aprendizajes. De hecho, en los marcos de ciberseguridad, una respuesta a incidentes, la última fase son lecciones aprendidas. Si no aprendemos de lo que hemos vivido, muy difícilmente vamos a superarnos. Desde Costa Rica yo les digo que aquí pasó a todos los niveles, porque no es una cuestión técnica, y vuelvo a este punto inicial, no es una cuestión técnica, sino es una cuestión de involucramiento en todos los niveles. Y aquí lo llamo, digamos, que es una concientización en el tema de ciberseguridad. Cada vez estamos más hiperconectados, utilizamos herramientas digitales. ¿Qué hacemos ahora que no involucre algo digital? prácticamente todo. Ahora tenemos un celular que es prácticamente una computadora, ¿verdad? Desde ahí tenemos todo. Y esto en Costa Rica, antes de los ciberataques, la ciberseguridad se está viendo como un gasto. De hecho, ni siquiera, ojalá se hubiera visto por lo menos un gasto, ni siquiera se gastaba, por así decirlo, sino que ya ahora sí se ve como una inversión, sí se ve como una necesidad de tener gente preparada. Les voy a dar un ejemplo. No es posible que usted invierta tal vez en un firewall, bueno, un equipo de seguridad muy costoso, si no tenés a la gente capacitada que va a trabajar en esos elementos técnicos. Eso para decir uno de los tantos ejemplos que hemos visto, porque muchas veces tenemos los elementos, pero si no tenemos a las personas capacitadas que puedan trabajar con esos elementos de seguridad, no les vamos a sacar el máximo provecho y muchas veces, muchos incidentes, se los puedo decir así, garantizar, que se ocasionan porque no están configurados muy bien. No se trabajan con las mejores prácticas, no hay equipos interdisciplinarios. Entonces, ve cómo va cambiando el panorama porque ya uno le hace ver y abrir los ojos y aquí es un constante aprendizaje. De hecho, creo que en ciber, en todas las carreras, creo que somos un eterno alumno y siempre vamos a estar aprendiendo y debemos aprender también de los errores. Debemos aprender de las situaciones que se nos están presentando porque eso nos fortalece. Entonces, desde Costa Rica, de las experiencias que hemos vivido, de hecho ahora, recientemente tuvimos ataques con un grupo, bueno, un ransomware hub, y bueno, eso no es algo nuevo para nosotros, pero sabemos ahora cómo atender eso. Y eso generó por lo menos una concientización a nivel de todos los niveles, hasta nivel presidencial, a tal punto que se creó una dirección de ciberseguridad específicamente para atender esas necesidades. Pero se sabe que se crea una unidad que tenés que capacitarlos para que puedan atender esos incidentes. Entonces, vea cómo va todo, va relacionado desde el término de gobernanza, desde el término, digamos, de la normativa, porque también hay cuestiones que vemos que es necesario crear roles específicos a nivel de ciberseguridad. Son capacidades diferentes, desarrollar ese tipo, digamos, de habilidades, que aquí es multidisciplinario. Entonces, creo que se está viendo en todo ese marco a nivel de Costa Rica. No quiero quitarles mucho tiempo para no acapararlo, pero sí es importante, digamos, hacer ver esas lecciones aprendidas también hacia afuera porque también tenemos un compromiso de lo que hemos vivido, de lo que nos han ayudado, la OEA también nos ha ayudado bastante, porque aquí es una cuestión también de retribuir de todo ese aprendizaje que hemos tenido también a toda la sociedad, digamos, a diferentes organizaciones, a los países. Entonces creo que es algo que interiorizamos, por lo menos desde acá, y que sabemos que es un compromiso que tenemos con todos.
Thank you so much, Esther. And it's interesting you ended with who's helped along the path, and it brings me to Carolyn because ITU has been doing support to countries from as far back, like when I started in cyber, like all the way back in 2012, 2011. Like you've been so present in so many countries for so many years. So it's really good to ask. I mean, we've now jointly published this paper, but more broadly, what has the ITU learned from what you have gathered over all these years in supporting countries in cybersecurity workforce?
Thanks. And I'll only share a few reflections. Of course, on this call, we have Marco Biso and Orhan Osmani, who really helped catapult the cybersecurity program into what it is today. So much credit goes to the two of them. But I also want to give credit back to OAS for the work that you've been doing in the region and pushing all of these dialogues forward. And I think that also comes back to this is a team sport, right? It's not that just one person, as much as it is often just one person who's in charge of something and has to work the late hours, it isn't just one person that does things. It's part of a team. We need to recognize those one people, but we also need to give them support. We've seen quite often how if you're not resourcing, if you're not building to what the needs are, if you're just trying to give them the flashy screens or the cool products and the expensive licenses, that's not going to have as much longevity as stakeholder engagement, getting everybody to be part of it and really making sure that then the country gets to be in the driving seat. As a UN organization, it's one of the things that Orhan often says is that the ITU is the member states. It's not us here in the office. It's really the member states, and that has to be at the forefront. We've now done over 80 CERT assessments. We've helped set up over 20 computer incident response teams. The Global Cybersecurity Index is old enough to be in school. It's almost reaching a decade. And most recently, our Her Cyber Tracks program and our Women in Cyber program has, I think it's over 500, 600 people have gone through it. The reality is there's a huge demand out there. And when we meet that demand, we really also need to be working together. One of the great things that I really like about our cyber drills, for example, is you see how those human connections make a difference and really spur people to say, okay, this is a technical problem, but I need to work with people to move forward. And with that also, I just really want to note that one of the things that I've really learned in this is there's tremendous potential out there. You would have thought that maybe the story is just, developed countries versus least developed or small island developing states. And it's true, particularly small island developing states right now need a lot of support. But when we looked at the most recent edition of the Global Cybersecurity Index, within that first tier, the top countries in the world having a lot of actions related to cybersecurity, they're developing countries. They're least developed countries. And in fact, some of them are being more responsive, more adaptive than some developed countries. So there's huge potential there. And we shouldn't just think of it as it's just a money issue. Money matters, of course, or it's just a development issue. It's a broader issue that we need to address. And I think with our partnerships, that really makes a difference.
Oh, thanks for that. And as we kind of wrap up, and we've been seeing all the feedback in the chat, and thank you everyone for being such an interactive audience and for the information that Fabiano and everyone has been sharing via chat. I think as we kind of wrap up and sit back, I wanted to ask each of you a final question. And we've spoken a lot about our challenges. We've spoken about country-specific approaches, Uruguay and Costa Rica, and the international approach as well through partnerships. And I want to ask if you could summarize all of that into one piece of advice to countries who are really trying to grasp the cyber skills issue. What would that one advice be? And I'll start with Fabiano, to our gentleman, Heser, because he's the minority today, and then to Caroline at the end. Fabiana?
Ahora sí, sí. Bien, yo creo que como consejo y, digamos, un abordaje nacional es necesario, ¿no? En Uruguay estamos trabajando, de hecho la OEA ha colaborado enormemente con nosotros en el desarrollo de una estrategia nacional de ciberseguridad y hay un pilar exclusivo que se llama justamente cultura de la ciberseguridad. Y en ese desarrollo de la cultura de la ciberseguridad, que está muy asociado a lo que se hablaba hoy de la orquesta, ¿no? De tratar de orquestar todos los sistemas para que funcionen de manera aceitada, está esto de pensar en clave nacional qué esfuerzos necesitamos hacer para, como también decía Heser, cubrir las necesidades que tiene el país. Obviamente hay muchas necesidades que son comunes a todos los países, hay escasez de profesionales en ciberseguridad en absolutamente todos lados, pero bueno, esto de ir partiendo el problema por pedacitos, ¿no? E identificar cuáles son las organizaciones en el país que tienen la mayor capacidad de llegada para resolver ese problema. Creo que acá el hecho de jugar en ecosistema, de convocar a todas las partes involucradas y que cada uno pueda impulsar desde su lugar de manera coordinada, ¿no? Con un objetivo común, creo que esa es parte de la clave. Lo que es educación terciaria, lo que son otras organizaciones que puedan, por ejemplo, de previsión social, que puedan trabajar con adultos mayores, ¿no? Con las universidades, la academia tiene un rol fundamental, pero también identificando cuáles son las necesidades del ecosistema, de la industria que tenemos en el país, ¿no? Tanto público como privado. Y también escuchando a la industria, saber en dónde enfocar los esfuerzos. Bueno, ¿qué tipo de profesionales estamos necesitando? Y seguramente van a haber muchos que van a ser del área de la ingeniería, ¿no? Pero capaz que no todos precisamos certificados o máster o doctores en ciberseguridad. Capaz que necesitamos analistas SOC, ¿bien? Entonces, o capaz que necesitamos diplomáticos que salgan y nos representen en determinados espacios. O necesitamos abogados que puedan asesorar en las empresas para tal o cual cosa. Y ahí ir enfocando y abordando el problema por pedazo. Creo que si tuviera que dedicar un consejo, ese es el consejo en el que me centraría.
Excelente. Hacer or minority.
Bueno, me gusta ser la minoría porque vemos el espacio, cómo las mujeres van empoderándose en esta materia. Y eso para mí, de verdad que me resulta de agrado estar en un panel donde la mayoría sean mujeres. De verdad que me enorgullece más bien estar aquí presente. En ese sentido, voy a hacer un poquito un collage de todo lo que hemos hablado y yo voy a hablar, digamos, cosas muy puntuales. Liderazgo y gobernanza son, a partir de ahí, es donde se comienza a generar las diferentes acciones. ¿Y por qué liderazgo y gobernanza? En ese tema de la ciberseguridad, tiene que haber un ente de gobernanza que tome liderazgo para que cada una de las acciones que se requiere el país, porque no podemos verlo como una receta, pero sí como una estrategia que tiene que adoptar un país en términos de liderazgo, gobernanza, para saber qué es lo que necesita, dónde más le duele. Es como un hospital, lo urgente, lo importante, y después vamos sacando todo el resto. Creo que es un tema, digamos, de priorización, de, de priorizar recursos. Usted para priorizar recursos, ¿qué tiene que decir? Es como en su casa. ¿Qué necesitamos en este momento? ¿Qué es lo más urgente? Saber que la ciberseguridad, que ahora que estamos en un mundo tan digitalizado, tiene que ir acompañado de ciberseguridad. Nosotros vimos cómo un ciberataque te genera, va bien, si hubiéramos adoptado cuestión la parte de ciberseguridad, el impacto habría sido muchísimo menor. Entonces es un tema, digamos, de priorización también de recursos, de ver que se necesita gente capacitada en diferentes niveles. Y aquí voy a hablar del eslabón más débil, que tal vez no hemos hablado muy a detalle, el usuario final. El usuario final se necesita sí o sí capacitar, esa higiene digital, esa cuestión de ciclo constante, que el 95% de veces de los residentes por donde entran por ese usuario. Entonces yo creo que es un término, digamos, a nivel de concientización, pero no podemos llevar concientización hasta los mandos bajos, por así decirlo, si el liderazgo, la cabeza, la gobernanza no tiene ese nivel de concientización. Yo les puedo decir ahorita que Costa Rica cambió el chip, por así decirlo, el mindset, porque a producto de todo lo que tuvimos, las altos jerarcas hicieron que eso se empujara y que todas las iniciativas fueran hacia adelante. Pero es una cuestión de todos también. Aquí la ciberseguridad se tiene que ver un tema integral. Aquí hablamos, vea que no hemos hablado mucho de tecnología, de procesos, de buenas prácticas, de adoptar marcos de ciberseguridad, la parte de cooperación. Vean, y eso es donde para también unos pilares muy importantes que también metimos en la estrategia es la cooperación. Las cooperaciones y alianzas, cooperaciones internacionales, la OEA, que nos ayudó mucho con la parte, digamos, de la realización de la estrategia, creo que para mí fue un pilar cuando yo entré acá. Ahí yo estoy muy agradecido con ellos. Eso que define una hoja de ruta, tener una hoja de ruta de hacia dónde vamos, es tener muy bien claro nuestro norte. La ITU, que nos dice cuál es tu nivel de madurez, dónde tenés que enfocarte. Entonces creo que tener muy bien el panorama hacia dónde vamos. O sea, si no sabemos hacia dónde vamos, cualquier puerto es bueno. Creo que tenemos que establecer muy bien la ruta y la ruta se establece solo con liderazgo y gobernanza. Eso es como mi mensaje para resumirlo.
No, that's perfect. And segue, Carolyn, last words are yours. What would be your advice?
I don't know if you've left me much. This has been so fantastic because there have been a lot of really interesting things raised. And Fabienne and Gazer, I was taking notes in the background on what you were saying because there's so much here to act on. I think let me just be a little bit cheeky and say, read this paper, because I think this does sum up a lot of the key issues out there and kind of the pain points. We should be past the age where we're looking at improving cybersecurity skills through a one-off course or a one-off awareness campaign. Really, we need to look at how these things fit together. And I think some of the things that have been shared in the chat have been really lovely as well as part of that. And then thinking of how can we make sure then that it continues to build and you get that multiplicative effect going so that we can all tackle some of these issues that are coming up. So download the paper, read the paper. I would also like to highlight with that we will be translating the paper into Spanish. So it will be available in all of the 6 UN official languages.
Perfect. And with that said, it's my pleasure to kind of just wrap up in terms of what I took away a lot. There was a lot of analogies and a lot of things that we now know what are the challenges, but we've gotten so many solutions. And I think some of the highlights for me is like really looking at it from multiple perspectives and cross-cutting issues. And as Hesera had said, that cycle, recognizing that the reality is we will train, we will lose people. Deal with that reality. I think as we kind of look at it from that improving skills and having a framework, having a direction in which we go, and even Fabienne, when she started, it really spoke to me about exercising the things that may not happen now, that are not common, and for us to be prepared for the future. So thank you so much to my panelists. I think it was an excellent discussion. And as Carolyn says, download the paper. Mariana is about to share with you the link again. So thank you, everyone. And Mariana, over to you to close us off.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to all our panelists for your insights. It was super interesting. And I think it's also great to see what your countries, your organizations are doing in terms of cybersecurity, workforce development, education, and how we can bring this to light and with specific examples, right, and case studies. Definitely a lot to think about and some very good examples. And I've been seeing a lot of movement in the chat and responses to what we've been talking about. So that is great to see, very dynamic. So thank you so much. And before we close, I just wanted to take 1 second to share with you again some of these tools, information. So you have here our accounts from the OAS CICTE cybersecurity section and also ITU development sector. So you can follow us, so you learn more. I've seen a lot of people interested, for example, in how we can have opportunities for capacity building courses. So here it is where you can see everything that we've been doing, everything that's open to the public, courses, virtual, for example, capacity building opportunities, webinars, conferences, for example, like our cybersecurity symposium that takes place every October. All this information, you can see it here, as well as other resources. For example, we talked a lot about awareness raising, especially in October with the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're always posting this information here. And you can also join our mailing list, where I promise you won't be spammed. But you will be receiving some very interesting emails regarding webinars like this one and other opportunities, if you so like. And finally, last but not least, we have our publication here with this QR code. Like Carolyn said before, this publication will be translated not only to Spanish, but I think Orhan also put it in the chat, to other 5 official languages in total, I believe. So hopefully stay tuned, and in the next coming months you'll have the Spanish and probably French and Portuguese, if I can dare to guess, with the ITU as well. But for now, you have the English version here in this QR code. And that would be all the information for now. I'll leave this for 1 more minute so you can get the QR code. And we also have the link in the chat. And with that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We had a steady 300 participants today with us. So thank you so much. Thank you to the ITU, to our panelists, Carrie-Anne, and for a great moderation, and also our interpretation, that Roxana, that was able to get even our fastest speakers translated. So thank you so much, and thank you very much for all the participants, and to Matt as well, who, as I mentioned in the beginning, has been very, very important in all these efforts. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great weekend as well.